Welcome to the Channel 1 Nightly News Broadcast with your host, Ethan Houston
and Kruin. Tonight, we'll be exploring the exciting topic of how someone's native language can affect the way they conceptualize different ideas.
We've gathered information from multiple researchers as well as interviewing local candidates who natively speak another language.
Also, this broadcast is a part of our language and translation series.
First, we explored a New York Times article, How Does Language Shape How You Think, by Guy Doischer.
This article was written in a very informative and unbiased tone, presenting information based on facts and studies.
The article focused on how different languages have different phrases or words that have no direct meaning in another language. This brings up the question, could a native speaker of another language conceptualize that idea without the use of their primary language?
We tested this theory by showing native speakers of different languages some words or phrases from their language that have no direct translation in English.
First, we interviewed local psychology teacher Mr. Fennessy,
who natively speaks German,
about different German words that have no direct translation into English. One of those words included the word Schadenfreude. Can you translate that directly into English?
Yeah, Schadenfreude. Schaden means sad, and then Freude is happy.
Right.
So it literally translates into sad, happy.
Yes, but
Yeah.
the idea of it in German is not
Right,
exactly that.
Right, exactly.
In the clip of Mr. P, he describes the word Schadenfreude, which has really no direct translation into English other than sad, happy, but that's really not the idea behind the word. The idea behind the word is it means that you take joy in other people's misfortune. And without that German word, he states how he really couldn't have conceptualized that idea without it.
In this next clip, Maestro Verdugo, a local Spanish teacher, attempts to translate 3 different Spanish words into English, but these words are not directly translatable.
Friolento. Okay, friolento is obviously something that is cold, but to me, friolento refers to a person that is very no sense with feelings. Tocayo. Tocayo is a folkloric word, and tocayo, it may be many things. Tocayo is always for a person that is even your brother, maybe has the same name that you have. Sobremesa is a Latin thing that we do after any meal, especially lunch or dinner.
So, that being that there's such a hard translation into English from those words, would you say that it's hard to even, like, if you wouldn't have known Spanish, do you think you would have been able to, like, think of that specific thing without, like, knowing that specific word, since there isn't a perfect translation in English?
No.
Yeah.
All 3 of these words became difficult for her to translate because the real meaning was lost in translation.
Lastly, we interviewed Mr. Brezzi about different French words that are hard to translate into English. One of those being flâner.
Flâner? Yep.
Yeah.
Flâner is to walk without thinking about anything specifically.
Okay, and so, but for that word, there is no, like, exact English translation, though, right? Like, there's no...
You could say to wander.
Yeah, but would you say that to wander and then that word have a different meaning, almost?
I would say, yeah, I would agree with that, yeah.
Okay. So it's almost hard to, like, if you didn't know French, to be able to conceptualize what that word would have meant.
Yes, that's
Right.
why Nelson Mandela's famous saying, it makes sense.
As you saw in the video, he had trouble translating that word because really, as you've seen in the other words, it has no direct English translation. It's really lost in translation. And although he said that it could have been translated to the word wander in English, there's a deeper meaning that we really don't have a word for in English. Therefore, like he stated in the video, he wouldn't have been able to fully conceptualize that idea without French.
Thanks to our interviewees, it is now easy to recognize how language can really affect the way you think, because there are many words in many languages that all have different meanings and are not always interchangeable.
Next, we analyzed a video by Lyra Borditsky, who is a researcher in this language field. She focused on how different languages assign different words to a specific gender, and how this can affect someone's perception on how they view that specific word.
In this video, she spoke with a very informative and passionate tone.
In the video, she explains how different words have different connotations based on the gender that they're assigned and how those native speakers of that language view that specific noun differently.
We decided to test this on our interviewees as well.
In our experiment we ran with our interviewees, we decided to show them different photos of different nouns in the language and ask them to describe it with adjectives.
Our first noun was the bridge.
The word bridge is masculine in French and Spanish, but it is feminine in German.
Bridge is has a curve to it, right? So it's like a semicircle. It's big. You know, I'm colorblind, but I'm guessing it's white.
Besides big is transportable, is useful, is movable.
Un pont, so it's masculine. Adjective in English, tall, white, narrow.
Our second noun was the mountain.
The mountain is feminine in Spanish and French, but it is masculine in German.
All right, so this is a mountain and it is rocky. It is pointy. It is shaped in like a triangle.
To me, any mountain is beautiful. I love mountains. Breathable, clean, animal friendly, human friendly, powerful.
Une montagne, the mountain, feminine in French. And you want some English adjectives?
Yeah.
Beautiful, red, enormous, magnificent.
As you saw in the clips, based on the nouns that we presented to interviewees, you saw that the interviewees described those nouns with either masculine or feminine adjectives based on the gender role assigned to that noun, which shows that perception based on those nouns when they're assigned to a gender can be altered due to that gender role.
And our findings also coincide with research done by other groups. Furthermore, we read an article by the Linguistic Society of America, How Does the Language I Speak Influence the Way I Think, by Betty Berner.
This article highlighted how certain languages have very broad descriptive words for certain things, whereas other languages have very specific descriptive words.
This idea is very noticeable in the realm of color, which we explored by showing our interviewees two different types of the color brown, which they were to describe in their native language.
Although we didn't see many differences between the colors in English and Spanish, we still saw one major one as seen in this clip.
Her hair
Okay, her hair is castaño,
What color it is?
in Spanish.
a café.
Yep.
Yes. In Spanish, the color brown has a very distinct difference when it's talking about hair color versus an object.
When we displayed the photo of just the brown splotch, she called it cafe. But when we showed her the hair brown, she called it
Castaño.
castaño, which means that there are two different words for the same word, for the same idea of what we would use in English. Moreover, we asked our interviewees how they thought that their native language has shaped their views on society.
Each interviewee had a different take on this question.
How do you think your native language of German has affected your views on society?
It all goes back, and I don't know how much of this is language as opposed to just growing up in Germany and being around the culture. But I mean, language is part of culture. I do find myself, again, more tolerant of other cultures.
Knowing that Spanish involves like applying certain, like assigning certain words to different genders and just the way that the language is set up as opposed to English, how does that, do you think, affect your view on just society in general?
Well, I'm going back to the same thing. Once you know another language, you are able to understand history. Por ejemplo, plantation. To me, a plantation will be a place in Colombia full of plants of bananas. That is a plantation. In the south of the United States, a plantation is not that. Plantation was the place where the slaves used to work years ago.
Yeah. How do you think that French has affected your views of society?
I think because of the historical factor of France, you can see where the language has its roots in many other languages.
When someone is speaking their native language, it leads them to view the adjectives and nouns of their language in a different way than someone with a different native language. This is due mainly to different gender assignments. This is important because not only does it affect the way that others view people, but it affects the way that people view those particular items.
It is also possible that specific gender assignments to words have influenced designs in different products. For instance, German and Spanish bridges may be different because each of these languages has the bridge assigned to a different gender.
These specific assignments of gender to different nouns in these languages really affect stereotypes in those cultures, because those when people view that specific noun, they'll think of the gender and they'll assume that the characteristics of that noun also apply to the gender.
We've also seen through our first test that different words completely lose their meaning through translation. Without their native language, many native speakers wouldn't be able to fully conceptualize these specific ideas.
People are only capable of constructing thoughts for which they possess actual words.
And recently, we have discovered new information through a TED Talk by Patrina Namaku. Not only do specific words affect translation and the brain, but also the way language is written has an impact.
She states in the video how English speakers and Arabic speakers produce chronological orders differently. In the study, the subjects who spoke English would order the items from left to right in chronological order, whereas the Arabic speakers would order them from right to left.
This further enhances our argument that native language truly affects the way you think.
This really does tie back to language and translation. Thank you. Now that you've seen this in broadcast, we asked you to do this very important survey.
Hey you!
Who, me?
Yeah, you. Take my survey.